Hello and welcome to Next IAS. Today we are having a discussion on anthropology as an optional and whether it is suitable for you or not. So by the end of this lecture, my purpose is to help you understand anthropology, and all of you would be able to understand these questions as well as write these answers as well, right? If you find the content of this lecture effective, do attempt these questions and try to share the answers with us. We'll evaluate and we'll try to conduct a session, one-to-one session, to help you understand further, right? On that note, let's start our discussion on anthropology and its basics. So what is anthropology? That is the most important question for the new aspirants, because anthropology as a subject is not available in most of the universities in India. It's a relatively new discipline. Now, when we talk about anthropology, it is derived from two Greek words, anthropos and logos. Anthropos means human and logos means systematic study. So effectively, anthropology is a systematic study of humans. That's the most basic definition of anthropology. Now, what anthropology actually studies? So anthropology studies the human in its totality, the total study of humans. Total study of humans. And at the same time, anthropology is a great mythbuster. It's a great mythbuster, right? Mythbuster means there are myths that we humans share in different societies, and sometimes these myths become, you can say, the things that violate human rights also. So it's a great mythbuster, the myths surrounding gender, race, caste, tribe, etc. are busted by anthropology. So I will come to the discussion on this myths in a short while. Let's discuss first anthropology, that is the definition of anthropology. So this is the most basic definition, that is a systematic study of humans, right? When we say anthropology is a systematic study, so it does not describe the entire scope of the subject, right? And that is where we try to understand its scope so that we can understand what actually anthropology studies. So anthropology studies the biological aspect of human biology, and it is studied under biological anthropology. It studies the social aspect, socio-cultural aspect of human under socio-cultural anthropology. Anthropology studies the linguistic aspect under linguistic anthropology, and it studies the past remains under archaeological anthropology. So these are the four major branches of anthropology that effectively covers its scope. So biological means it studies the human evolution and human diversity. It studies the socio-cultural evolution and socio-cultural diversity. It studies the same way evolution of language and diversity. So effectively, anthropology studies the evolutionary perspective as well as the variations and diversity among human groups. In the same way, evolution of past cultures and the diversity among the past cultures. If you have understood this, that the scope of anthropology is very, very wide, it covers the biological, socio-cultural, linguistic and archaeological aspect of humans, then you can understand many things about anthropology and its definition also. Let me just place all of these things in a kind of graph, and there you will find something better. So let's see the definition of anthropology through its scope. So anthropology has four major sub branches, that is biological anthropology, that study the biological aspect. Similarly, socio-cultural anthropology, linguistic anthropology, and archaeological anthropology. Okay, and all of these branches study the evolutionary aspect as well as the diversity aspect. So evolutionary aspect means the temporal aspect or the time dimension. Similarly, the diversity aspect means the space dimension or the place dimension. Although I must remind you that the two terms space and place are different. Place is territorial and space means a domain. Okay? If someone need clarity on that, please write back to me, I will explain it. So when we talk about biological anthropology, it studies the evolution of humans from apes, right? So apes to the modern man. Right? Similarly, socio-cultural, so evolution from past simple society to the modern complex society. Modern society. And you know that the culture of simple society was different, modern society was different. Linguistic anthropology similarly, so evolution of languages. Evolution of languages from simple, we can say, speeches to abstract languages. Okay? So archaeological anthropology similarly, so evolution of the past cultures from Paleolithic to Mesolithic to Neolithic to Chalcolithic to Bronze Age to Iron Age, etc. Right. Now when we talk about the space dimension or the place dimension, so biological anthropology study the space dimension. How? So it study the diversity. So biological diversity simply means the races, the so-called races or the biological differences. You may know that people living in Africa, they look different than those living in India or those living in Europe. Now the differences in their physical attributes are due to the environment where they have been living for thousands of years, and they are also due to the kind of socio-cultural practices, marriage practices and all these. Similarly, socio-cultural diversity, so there are tribal cultures, there are caste cultures, and there are cosmopolitan cultures. That is the diversity among the societies and cultures. Similarly, linguistic diversity, you can talk about phrase in Rajasthani, kos par pani badle and char kos par wani, so that can be used here. So linguistic diversity. Ganesh Devi and his team at Bhasha Research Foundation conducted a linguistic survey of India, People's Linguistic Survey of India. In that they documented around 780 languages in India. That is Ganesh Devi. Okay, so that is linguistic diversity. Then the archaeological diversity. So archaeological diversity, that means the lithic cultures of Europe were different from the lithic cultures of Africa and Asia. So that means the diversity in prehistoric cultures or proto-historic cultures. So that is the subject matter of archaeological anthropology. So what you have understood here is that definition of anthropology and the scope of anthropology. Now let's place the scope and definition together. So what is the definition of anthropology? anthropology is the study of all aspects of mankind in all times and all places. That is the definition given by Marvin Harris. Okay, it's the study of all aspects of mankind in all times and all places. What are these aspects? So these aspects are biological, socio-cultural, linguistic and archaeological. So I believe you got a little clarity on what is the definition of anthropology and little clarity on what is the scope of anthropology. Now, this definition also does not reveal many things. It does not reveal what is the methodology of anthropology. See, every person who discusses about men is an anthropologist according to Aristotle. Aristotle says anthropology is a gossip that revolves around men, and anthropologist is a gossiper who talks about himself. If that definition is taken into consideration, then we can think that anyone who is talking about human is an anthropologist. But do they have a methodology to study men? Do they have a proper method that can be replicated by others or the next generation scholars? No. You and me, when we talk about men, we have a kind of judgmental view about humans. When we gossip about ourselves, we basically pass judgment about others. So we don't have a methodology, and the methodology is not reflected in the definition also. That is where we will consider another definition of anthropology that is considered by most of the anthropologists across the spectrum. So this definition is that anthropology is the systematic, objective, and holistic study of humans, over all times and all places. This is a definition that reflects the methodological dimension, how anthropology study. It showcases the ideological dimension of anthropology. That means anthropologists do not judge the native cultures. Anthropologists do not judge the native cultures or any culture that they study. So that is the ideological dimension of anthropology. This one is the holism. That is something that what it all covers. That showcases what it covers. That means it covers its scope, right? And these dimensions, these are sub parts of that scope, right? That means ये रिफ्लेक्ट करता है कि क्या नेचर क्या है एंथ्रोपोलॉजी का. सो नेचर में क्या है, ये इवोल्यूशन को स्टडी करती है कि मैन यहाँ पे आया कहाँ से और एक मैन दूसरे मैन से अलग क्यों है, सोशियो कल्चरली, बायोलॉजिकली एंड लिंग्विस्टिकली, इन सब की स्टडी है. नाउ इफ यू जस्ट लुक एट दिस डेफिनेशन, सो आई वुड आस्क यू to just ponder over, just look at the question that I have given in the very beginning, right? So this is the question. Anthropology is the systematic, objective and holistic study of humankind in all times and places. This definition was asked in 2022 in 20 marks, and the examiner asked you to elaborate the argument, how anthropology study. Now if you just go to this definition, so what is this definition says, that anthropology is a systematic study. Systematic means it has its own system of inquiry, it has its own method of inquiry, right? Now, what is that system of inquiry, or what the methodology is? The most important methodology of anthropology is that it is a field science. That means it study humans in their own habitat. जहाँ पे भी men रहता है वहीं जाके anthropology study करती है. क्यों? Because we cannot rear humans in laboratory. Humans are not laboratory animals. So anthropology is a field science. That is the most important idea here. Second is that anthropology is objective. Objective means it is unbiased. It does not judge the other people. So it is unbiased study of humans. How it is unbiased? Because anthropology believes in a very important principle of cultural relativism. It believes in cultural relativism. What is cultural relativism? Cultural relativism is a philosophy. It's a principle, it's a methodology, it's a theory in anthropology that says that all cultures are unique. All cultures are equally valid. No culture is superior, no culture is inferior, and we cannot judge one culture from our ethnocentric lens. So that is the core idea here, cultural relativism. Cultural relativism is a polar opposite of ethnocentrism. What is ethnocentrism? Judging others from the perspective of self. That means if you are a vegetarian, you judge others, other non-vegetarians from your vegetarian perspective. If you believe in a particular form of marriage, then you judge others from your marriage perspective. So that is what cultural relativism is and ethnocentrism is. So ethnocentrism is judging others and relativism says don't judge. Why you should not judge others? Because the moment you judge others, you lack objectivity, you become biased, you cannot understand them fully. That's why anthropology asks you to become unbiased using the principle of cultural relativism, right? So objectivity or unbiased approach is the hallmark of anthropological research and practice. Next is the scope or the holism. Holism means anthropology study the all aspects. What are the aspects that we have studied just a while ago? That means study the biological aspect, socio-cultural aspect, linguistic aspect, as well as archaeological aspect. So that is what holistic means. All times, so just now we have studied the all times wala idea. Here times, so biological aspect ko time pe, right, and socio-cultural aspect ko time pe, linguistic aspect ko time pe, and archaeological aspect ko time pe. So that is what this idea suggests, and similarly the place side, right? So if you just go to that definition, you can understand that question that was asked. If you understand the meaning of the word systematic, you can write what systematic means. If you understand the word objective, you can write that. If you can understand the word holism, holistic, then you can write it. Now, most important thing that what I have told you, it's a superficial layer about this particular definition. The more you read in anthropology, more ideas you will develop about the same definition. Here I gave you that anthropology, or you can say it believes in unbiased approach. Unbiased means the fact. We talk about facts which are not prejudiced. So if you take biology, if you take DNA, if you take genes, they are facts, right? So where is the judgment there? So when anthropology study genes, that is also a fact. So that can also be added here, that anthropology is objective. Objectivity is there in the biological sciences, right? When you say systematic, that means it has a method of inquiry that is unique to anthropology itself, right? What that methodology is? Field work or participant observation. That is very unique to anthropology. Okay, now one thing we are going to do to understand this definition further, right, that would be to understand the methodological dimension, that how anthropology is being done, how anthropologists study societies and cultures, what is their way of working, how they understand people and their behavior in totality, how they bust the myths about human behavior, right? So let's understand this by going into that slide only, right? So anthropology is the study of the biological aspect, the socio-cultural aspect, the linguistic aspect, and the archaeological aspect. Under biological anthropology, socio-cultural anthropology, linguistic and archaeological anthropology. Now, different branches of anthropology, which are also known as Boasian branches, because Franz Boas, he classified anthropology into 4 distinct sub-disciplines. It has its own methodologies to study man. Now, biological anthropology study evolution, right? What is evolution? It is a transition from ape to man, right? I am using this word man, that means human. So let me write that human itself, that would be better, because there is a difference here, right? Earlier man was used, now human is used. Why human is used? To make it gender sensitive. Okay, so ape to human, this transition is the evolutionary aspect that is studied under biological anthropology. Now, when man transitioned from ape to human, there are changes in the chromosomes. Say chimpanzees, they have 48 chromosomes and humans have 46 chromosomes, right? There are changes in genes, right? So these are studied under genetics. So what are the methods used by the biological anthropology? So genetic method is used to understand evolution. Second way to understand the evolution from ape to human is to compare their biology, right? You can compare what kind of bones ape have and what kind of bones men have. The apes are generally quadruped, that means they walk on the 4 legs. We are biped, we walk on the 2 legs. So our anatomy is different, but we have a lot of similarities also, right? So we can use the methods like comparative anatomic studies. That is also another method of study, right? So that is to understand the evolution. So you can use comparative anatomy, you can use the genetic method to understand evolution. You can also use this comparative anatomy not just for the apes but for extinct human ancestors also, right? Next, if you just wanted to understand further about the diversity aspect, because biological anthropology study both the evolutionary dimension as well as diversity dimension. So here we try to understand the biological diversity among humans, right? So the biological diversity among humans can be studied under a broader heading of so-called race, right? Or the adaptation of humans to different geographical conditions, right? When humans adapted to different geographical conditions, they developed different type of skin color, they developed different kind of body types. Some groups are very lean and tall, say for example the people from Kenya, Sudan, they are very lean and tall. If you look at the western side, the Central African side, you will find the Negrito population, very small bodied humans. If you go to say in the same way Andamans and Nicobars, you will also find the same Negrito populations. So there are places where Negritos are there are places where tall lean people are there. There are places like the Arctic area where the people are very stout. Eskimos काफी stout bodied होते हैं. So that kind of different kind of physical diversity we see among humans. Okay, so let's similarly adaptation can be for the disease. Now, people living in the heavily forested regions, they have a different kind of hemoglobin variant called as sickle cell variant of hemoglobin. Sickle cell variant of hemoglobin make the RBCs sickle shaped, and that provide resistance against malaria, right? So that is also an adaptation. So that diversity in the physical attributes, that diversity in the genetic attributes can be studied. How? Suppose आपको sickle cell anemia को study करना है, तो कैसे study करोगे? You can study it through the laboratory tests, blood tests के through, है ना? वो आपको नहीं करना, आपको सिर्फ एक generally थोड़ा overview रखना है, राइट? बॉडी टाइप को कैसे स्टडी कर सकते हो? तो बॉडी के मेजरमेंट करने होंगे, है ना? मेजरमेंट मींस एनाटॉमी का मेजरमेंट करना होगा। स्किन कलर का स्टडी तो देख के सोमेटोस्कोपिक स्टडीज होंगी, ठीक है? तो इनकी स्टडीज के लिए क्या क्या मेथड हो सकते हैं? तो मेथड क्या हो सकता है? एक तो एंथ्रोपोमीट्रिक मेथड हो सकते हैं। एंथ्रोपोमीट्रिक मेथड क्या होगा? एंथ्रोपो मीन्स ह्यूमन और मीट्रिक मीन्स मेजरमेंट। सिमिलरली लेबोरेटरी मेथड्स में सेरोलॉजी हो सकती है, ठीक है? सो इसमें ये मेथोडोलॉजी होंगी। नाउ जस्ट लुक एट द स्लाइड दैट वी वर डिस्कसिंग हियर। सिस्टमैटिक means anthropology have its own system of study humans. So biological anthropologists have some systems of study that can be written into that answer. Similarly, when you talk about the socio-cultural anthropology have its own system of studying human, or you can say evolution of human societies and cultures, as well as diversity among human societies and cultures. So when you talk about the evolution in the socio-cultural anthropology, how we can understand the evolution? So we can understand evolution using historical method. How you can understand the diversity among the societies and cultures? So you can use the comparative method. Okay, that way we can understand the history as well as the diversity. Similarly, there are one more method. There is one more very interesting method in socio-cultural anthropology, that is the participant observation. Okay, so that is also a very important, and that is also called as ethnographic method, fieldwork method, right? Similarly, the third one, that is the linguistic anthropology. It is also studying evolution and diversity. How it studies evolution? Linguistic evolution. So linguistic evolution is okay, so the linguistic anthropology, it has methods like glottochronology. Glottochronology try to understand when two languages diverge from each other, from the parent language. That is the role of glottochronology. And similarly, there is another method called lexicostatistics that tries to understand the lexical similarities between two languages. That means the lexicostatistics that tries to understand the differences in different languages. Okay, so there are many methods in linguistic anthropology also, right? In particular, there is a very interesting method in linguistic anthropology to understand the context of language use, and that method is called as speaking model. Speaking model was developed by Delheims, right? All of these words mean something. S stands for settings and scene, right? That means right now where we are conversing, this is a classroom setting. P means participants. Participants involve the teacher here and all the students that are watching this class. E for ends, that means what is our motive, what is our ultimate objective, A for act sequence. Act sequence means when we started the class, we started with hello and good evening, right? And when we'll end, we'll say that all the very best, right? So there is a proper act sequence of the entire discussion here. K means key. Key means the tone in which we are talking. So we are talking in a very warm tone, in a very motivating tone. I means instrumentalities. Instrumentalities means what are the ways through which, or what are the mediums through which we are communicating. So we are communicating through verbal means as well as through some diagrams, through some graphics and some written words. So these are the instrumentalities. Some of you who are watching online, so online ke liye you are watching it through the mobile phone or laptop, that is also instrumentality. N stands for norms. What are the norms? So norms kind of you can say the rules that we are following. We are not fighting here. We have specific rules for educational institutes, right? And G is for genre. That means our genre is education. We are not doing any comedy here when we are studying. So these are the 8 letters that describe the, you can say, communication, how language is used in a social context. So different kind of communications can be studied using this speaking model. You can study anything. You can go to any comedy session, or you can say that stand-up comedy or something, and you can apply this. You can go to any violent scene and you can apply this. Say you apply this on a comedy, stand-up comedy. So setting means there would be a kind of entire setup in which there would be a stage where a comedian is trying to perform his art. So that is the setting and the scene. Participants involve the comedian as well as the audience, and basically enjoyment, entertainment. Act sequence, so they start with their own kind of words and then they end with their own words. Key, so that kind of you can say comic tone would be there. I, instrumentalities, so instrumentalities would be mic, instrumentalities would be some symbolic communication, some metaphors, right? Norms, so उनके norms अलग होते हैं comedians के, and genre, तो comedy एक genre हो गया. Same can be applied on a fight on the roadside, है ना, road पे लोग लड़ रहे हैं, उनका communication भी आप study कर सकते हो using the same model. So setting would be a roadside scene where people are fighting on something, right? Participants, जो लोग लड़ रहे हैं आपस में कैसे गालियां दे रहे हैं, participants हो गए. Ends, तो उनका लड़ना ही काम है, right? Act sequence, तो गाली से शुरू हुआ था, गाली पे ही खत्म करेंगे या फिर थप्पड़ मुक्का मार के खत्म करेंगे. कि so basically किस तरह की tone, so aggressive tone होगा उनका, right? Instrumentalities, so instrumentalities could be their, you can say hands or the verbal abuses or anything. Norms, वहाँ पे norms काम ही नहीं कर रहे हैं, right? And genre. So this can be applied. So this is a method of studying the communication language, right? And archaeological anthropologists, so they use different methods. So you might have heard about one term called stratigraphy, right? You might have heard about carbon-14 dating, right? So these are different methods used in archaeological anthropology. So when we are saying that anthropology is a systematic study, so anthropologists use different methods that I've just mentioned. So they can be brought into this part of this question. Objective, here anthropology deals with facts. Anthropology is unbiased study. Anthropology does not judge other cultures. When I was saying about cultural relativism, I said that cultural relativism means not judging other cultures from your own cultural lens. Now, how did this idea developed in anthropology? So there was a very famous anthropologist called Franz Boas. He visited the Baffin Island in 1883-1884 for around 15 months. He wanted to study the geography, the coastline of the Baffin Land, and he wanted to prepare a cartographic map of it. When he went there, he lost his maps, and his hut where he was living, that was also damaged. He was struggling to survive in the harsh terrain of the Baffin Land. despite of the fact that he belonged to a very highly developed civilization of Germany. On the other hand, the people who are the inhabitants of Baffinland, that means the Eskimos, they were very well adapted to that island. They were not facing any problem. There was no problem in their living. They can easily get food, they can survive that harsh cold, there was no problem. So when he was studying the coastline as well as the people living on the Baffinland, Franz Boas realized that I am no superior to them. My culture, my civilization is nowhere superior to their culture. That means their culture is unique in their own way. They are very well adapted to this environment and they have developed in the course of their own history. So I have no right to judge them. And this idea he put forth in his book, The Central Eskimo. And later on, he elaborated on this idea in different books of his. So this is the idea where we talk about that how did the idea of cultural relativism originate. Next is holism or holistic approach that we have discussed, times and place. So I believe you can write this question very well. Do try to write and get back to us so that we can find a common ground for discussion, right? Although yes, many of the new aspirants may not be able to connect with the ideas that I have described. Many of the words you might have been hearing for the first time, so you may not be able to connect, but slowly and steadily you will be catching up with these words because these words would come again and again on every class. So say if you are hearing a word again and again, you won't find it a alien word, right? So I believe you understand what is anthropology. So anthropology is a systematic, objective and holistic study of humankind over all times and all places. That is the definition of anthropology. And this definition describes the methodological dimension of anthropology, the ideological dimension of anthropology and the scope dimension of anthropology. So this definition you have to memorize, you have to understand and you have to use in understanding the anthropological concepts as well as theories. That's what I just wanted to say in this part. Now, we have understood what the anthropology is, its definition. We have understood the scope partly. So, we have understood the definition. We have understood the scope. We have understood the methods. And the fourth part is the application of anthropology. That means where it can be applied. What is the practical relevance of anthropology? See, unless any subject have any practical application or relevance, it won't be studied anywhere. So anthropology must have some practical applicability. Where does it can be used? So it can be used in all the four branches, all the four dimensions. That means biological anthropology की application हो सकता है, socio-cultural anthropology का application हो सकता है, archaeological का and linguistic का. When we say application, so we talk about one branch of anthropology that is called as applied anthropology. What is applied anthropology? So applied anthropology is the use of anthropological theories, methods, perspectives, approaches for practical human use. Now there can be applied biological anthropology, applied socio-cultural anthropology, applied linguistic anthropology and applied archaeological anthropology. Where we can use applied biological anthropology, so it can be used in medicine, so health and disease. It can be used in nutrition. It can be used in say sports anthropology, and it can be used in forensics. When we say disease, so it can be useful in disease diagnosis, disease prevention and disease treatment. Okay, now most of you must be believing in evil eye, nazar lagna, nazar lagne se बीमार होता है, ठीक है? If you go to the doctor would say ऐसा कुछ हो नहीं सकता है. But if a doctor reject on the face of a patient, then the patient would not be able to express his ideas to the doctor. The very first thing that the doctor or the healthcare professional must be doing is to understand the mindset of the patient in order to provide treatment to the patient. So when a patient comes with the idea that मुझे नज़र लगी है, उसके कारण मुझे फीवर आ रहा है, so the first thing is to understand कि क्या हुआ है, क्योंकि अगर उसके mindset के according we are not dealing, then the acceptance of the treatment would be minimal. So the first thing is to understand the people. Now in that doing, we are not promoting superstition, but understanding the superstition is the first step to deal with superstition and superstition related behavior. तो जब अगर पेशेंट आता है नज़र लगने का लेके, तो पहले उसको समझना है और उसको ट्रीटमेंट प्रिस्क्राइब करना है अकॉर्डिंगली. दैट इज द फर्स्ट थिंग. समटाइम्स वी मे नीड द हेल्प ऑफ ओझा, शमान एंड ऑल दीज लोकल मेडिसिन मैन ऑल्सो. ठीक है, अब डायग्नोसिस एक किए तो आपको समझ में आ गया इजी से, बट एक डिजीज स्टडी की गई थी 1950s में, आइडेंटिफाई की गई थी, दैट वाज कुरु. And Kuru was studied in Papua New Guinea among a tribe called four people of Papua New Guinea. Now, four people experienced this disease called Kuru. The Kuru was a disease in which people were dying and their body coordination was completely lost. Those who were dying, they were dying because of the loss of body coordination. That means they could not walk, they could not stand, and in many cases they just laugh and they leave their you can say body down itself. So कुरु में लोग ऐसे मर रहे थे. अब उस टाइम पे जब स्टडी हुआ, जो डॉक्टर्स ने स्टडी किया, it was found that most of the people who are dying, they are relatives. So doctors thought that it is a genetic disorder. So it was you can say classified as a genetic disease, because the people who are dying are relatives. Later on, two anthropologists went to the four people, and they were Shirley Lindenbaum and Robert Glass. These two people went to the four people and they tried to understand the root cause of this disease called Kuru. When they started studying, they found that most of the people who are dying of Kuru are either women and children, and they are related. So they are convinced that there is some connection between the relatives and those who are dying. Then they started exploring their society, and they found that the kinship among the four people is not based on biology. That means relatives are not just related to each other by biology, rather those who habitually lives together are relatives. जो पास में रहने लगे वही रिश्तेदार बन गए. That means कोई बायोलॉजी का कनेक्शन नहीं था वहां पे. तो फिर कहां से वो डिजीज आ रही है? Then when they explored further, they found that they have a typical ritual of cannibalism. वो अपने डेड का मीट खाते थे. जो भी डेड होता था, जो भी मर जाता था, उसका वो मीट खाते थे. And those who has consumed the meat of the dead ancestor, they sometimes die in the similar fashion. That means there must be something in the meat. And then investigations took place, and it was found that it was because of a defective infectious protein found in the flesh of men that causes this neurodegenerative disorder called Kuru. So इस disease का proper diagnosis कैसे हो पाया? When anthropologists went to the field, they did the field work, they tried to understand their kinship as well as the disease. That means सिर्फ एक लॉजिक से काम नहीं चलता. एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट को सारे लॉजिक एक साथ यूज करने पड़े. उन्होंने उनकी सोशियो कल्चरल स्टडी की और उन्होंने उनकी बायोलॉजिकल स्टडी भी की, एंड देन दे आर एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड that why this disease was there. So this is how anthropologists try to diagnose a particular disease. So they aid medicine, they aid the medical sciences in that manner. Similarly, it can be useful for prevention. So social medicine, that means social distancing and all these things can be suggested by anthropologists as well, right? And prevention can be through these methods called vaccines and all these things also, right? Treatment gene therapy से हो सकता है और जो local treatment भी हो सकता है. Similarly, nutrition में तो न्यूट्रिशन में you might have heard about पोषण अभियान and many other schemes that can help in better nutrition of people, है ना. स्पोर्ट्स एंथ्रोपोलॉजी में क्या होगा, तो सिलेक्शन ऑफ स्पोर्ट्स पर्सन्स एट अ राइट एज एंड देन ट्रेनिंग देम इन अ प्रॉपर मैनर. तो एक स्कीम है गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की, टारगेट ओलंपिक पोडियम स्कीम, दैट कैन बी यूज्ड हियर. फोरेंसिक में अभी जो अहमदाबाद में एयर इंडिया क्रैश हुआ था, उनकी जो डेड बॉडीज आइडेंटिफाई की थी, दैट वर आइडेंटिफाइड यूजिंग द डीएनए टेक्नोलॉजीज, डीएनए फिंगरप्रिंटिंग. सो वो यूज कर सकते हैं हम यहाँ पे एज एन एग्जाम्पल. ठीक है. Similarly, application of socio-cultural anthropology. So it can be useful to remove the conflicts from the societies by promoting cultural relativism. है ना. तो इससे हम क्या कर सकते हैं, conflicts कम कर सकते हैं, acceptance बढ़ा सकते हैं. It can be useful for developing policies for rural people as well as tribal. ठीक है. और ऐसा नहीं है कि हुआ नहीं है, पहले होता है. जो ट्राइबल सब प्लान था, दैट वाज स्टार्टेड ऑन द रिकमेंडेशंस ऑफ एलपी विद्यार्थी एंड एससी दुबे. ओके. द फॉरेस्ट पॉलिसी ऑफ 1988, दैट वाज स्टार्टेड ऑन द रिकमेंडेशंस ऑफ बीके रॉय बर्मन. राइट. इट कैन बी यूजफुल फॉर प्रमोशन ऑफ द rights of the women, so advocacy on the basis of gender. ठीक है. Gender advocacy, that means there are many anthropologists who advocate for the rights of women. Say for example, Leela Dubey is one, Gail Rubin another, Gayatri Spivak, Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, and many other scholars, they work for. Similarly, applied linguistic anthropology. So there are many languages which are dying. According to the People's Linguistic Survey of India, conducted by Ganesh Devi and his team, almost 600 languages, documented languages, right? 780 were documented, and out of them 600 are dying. So to conserve the dying languages, we can use linguistic anthropology, and we can use linguistic anthropology to promote acceptance between the languages, because language is a very hot topic nowadays because of the three language formula and this kind of north and south tussle in Indian politics. That is also, you can say, sparked again because of delimitation exercise also. So you may use that also. So we can you can say reduce linguistic chauvinism and promote acceptance of different linguistic groups with respect to each other. Similarly, applied anthropology, archaeological anthropology, so it can be useful for cultural resource management and public archaeology, spreading awareness among the people. It can be useful for reconstruction of the human past. ठीक है. So what we have understood here is the application. So effectively we have understood all the 4 dimensions of this: definition, scope, methods and application. If you understand this much, then you are on a right path to understand anthropology. Now, by understanding this, one important question arises in the mind of any person who is trying to understand anthropology, that is, the uniqueness of anthropology. One of our friend is writing that shouldn't it be humankind, and it is Raghuvanshi, I would say that yes, indeed it should be humankind. And let's understand the difference between men, human and humankind. So men, basically, when you read men from the gendered perspective, you apply your logic that men means the male body, right? That means male person. When you say human, so you are restricting yourself just to modern humans. And when you include humankind, so you include the diversity in the modern humans, as well as you can include, that is a broader term, you can include some of the ancestors that are there, that were there in the human lineage. So naturally, yes, humankind would be much more wider, but on that note, I must also tell that if you read more and more anthropological works, so the word human and humankind is used interchangeably, so it doesn't make much difference, right? But yes, I must acknowledge your sincerity with respect to the words. It's very important because words mean a lot. Very nice, Kshitiz. Yes, Janvi will try to do, dear. Okay, so uniqueness of anthropology. So when we talk about uniqueness of anthropology, that means what makes anthropology unique. See, there are many disciplines that tries to understand human. Sociology study human social behavior. Political science study the political behavior of man. Economics study the economic behavior of man, and so on and so forth. Almost all the social sciences study one or the other socio-cultural aspect of man. Similarly, sciences, say biology, study the biological aspect of human, right? The other sciences, say for example physics, chemistry, so they try to understand the nature, but ultimately when you study the nature, the physical forces or the biochemical or the chemical processes, ultimately the benefit goes to human. Even when you study mathematics, the benefit goes to human. So everything from the centrality of human, that means the world is anthropocentric. That means the disciplines are designed in an anthropocentric manner. That means everything has some relationship with anthropology, everything has some relationship with human. On that note, let's try to understand that if everything study human, so anthropology mein alag kya hai, unique kya hai? That's the important question to ask. So there are some things that make anthropology distinct, unique from other disciplines. The very first thing that make anthropology unique is that anthropology is a field science. Anthropology is not a laboratory science. It is not giving judgments or generalizations or theories based on some statistics. Rather, anthropologists would go to the field, live with the people, participate in their day-to-day activities, and then they try to make sense of their world. That means anthropologists do field work through participant observation, and on the basis of that they try to understand human cultures and societies. Second important point here is that when they are doing this kind of study, they don't judge the people they are studying. They are not judging the people they are studying. So they use cultural relativism. Right? That means it is unbiased study, without judgment study. They don't judge the cultures that they are studying. The third important point here is that when they are studying humans, they study their all aspects. That means holism is the another dimension of anthropology that is unique to anthropology. And then anthropologists study the insider view. Amic means insider view, what people think about their culture, and they also study the outsider's view. That means how you see. Okay? So we use amic as well as attic perspective, and most importantly we study the change dimension as well as the static dimension of their culture. That means we study the diachronic as well as synchronic elements, or you can say we study human societies and cultures from diachronic and synchronic perspective. What is diachronic? So chron is the unit of time, and diachronic, it is the changing aspect, that means historical dimension. Similarly, When you say synchronic, so here we study here and now. That means what is happening now. So these are the 5 key unique features of anthropology that make anthropology unique from other subjects. Now, if suppose the examiner asks that what makes socio-cultural anthropology unique, so you can use all these aspects to differentiate anthropology from other social sciences, right? And now on that note, you just look at this question, right? Elaborate the scope of anthropology and elucidate its uniqueness in the field of other social sciences. Okay, so it is unique with respect to all those 5 features that we have discussed. Now in that I could not discuss the case studies. Ideally I should be providing one case study with each of these. So I would give you a passing reference of case studies. I won't be able to elaborate because of the time constraint, right? So when you talk about field science, so here you can use the case study of Malinowski. Okay, Malinowski studied Trobrianders and he explained this study in his book Argonauts of Western Pacific. That was published in 1922. That can be done. Or suppose ये याद नहीं आता है, तो you can use another study of Margaret Mead. She studied Samoan people and she published the work in the book Coming of Age in Samoa, right? That was published in 1928. So either of these two you can write here. When you talk about cultural relativism, so here you can write the work of Franz Boas on Eskimos. Okay. When you talk about holism, that means the study of all aspects. Here if you want holistic study, so Kuru ki jo study thi, that was a holistic study, just now we have discussed. Okay. On the top of it, if you just want to write another one, the same Malinowski's work on Trobrianders was a holistic work. Same way, when you talk about Margaret Mead's work on Samoans, that was also a holistic work that can be covered. When you talk about emic and etic, okay, so Marvin Harris emphasized on etic study, right? I won't be able to explain it today because you require understanding about Marvin Harris, right? And Malinowski emphasized on emic perspective, or sometime that he used the word natives point of view. That means जो लोग रहते हैं उनका point of view, natives point of view. Okay. Similarly, diachronic view, that means historical study. So, historical study किस किसने किया? तो एक स्कूल है एंथ्रोपोलॉजी में, that is diffusionism. अगर आप 6th यूनिट चेक करोगे, there you will find diffusionism. तो उन्होंने डायक्रॉनिक स्टडी किया, राइट? इवोल्यूशनिस्ट ने भी डायक्रॉनिक स्टडी किया. और सिंक्रोनिक स्टडी किसने किया? तो स्ट्रक्चरल फंक्शनलिस्ट ने किया, है ना? स्ट्रक्चरल फंक्शनलिस्ट एज वेल एज फंक्शनलिस्ट. सो ये ब्राउन का वर्क जो था वो सिंक्रोनिक था और फंक्शनलिस्ट जो था वो मेलिनोस्की, इसका वर्क भी सिंक्रोनिक था. सिमिलरली लिवाई स्ट्रोस का वर्क, अगर आप लोगों ने थोड़ा बहुत एंथ्रोपोलॉजी को सुना है तो स्ट्रक्चरलिज्म की जो थ्योरी है वो भी सिंक्रोनिक पर्सपेक्टिव प्रेजेंट करती है ह्यूमन के बारे में. So that way you can write these scholars also to make your answer a little bit enriched, right? So these are the some basic questions. First one is very easy, scope and relevance, that means the academic side and the application side, right? These are few advanced level questions, and if you just read these questions, do read these questions. I would be providing you this PDF to you people so that you can understand. But if you read these questions, it require a little interlinkage, right? And this is the important part. Now if you can understand these questions a little bit, do let me know. If not, then I will be taking a second session to explain this in a different way, right? Now what I left in the very beginning, that anthropology is the total study of human, I think that become very clear. So anthropology is a total study of human and its behavior. Second, anthropology is a great myth buster. When you talk about that anthropology is a great myth buster, it busted the myths surrounding gender, it busted the myths surrounding race, caste and tribe. Let's consider them one by one. The first one, that is the myths surrounding gender. So there are many myths surrounding gender, and patriarchy is rooted in those myths only. Many cultures believe that women are inferior, they have less capability. And not just that, the many cultures believe, even the scientific community used to believe in that manner, because scientific community proposed a hypothesis that is called as men the hunter hypothesis also. That hypothesis says that men in the primitive society in the ancient times was the hunter, male is the hunter, and woman, female, was the gatherer, because female was weak. Now, what was the basis of that man hunter hypothesis and women the gatherer hypothesis? The basic logic here is biology. That means men have bigger muscles. Why men have bigger muscles? Because men have testosterone, and because of the bigger muscles they are more powerful, and hunting require power. So they were hunters. That was the logic. This logic later on was questioned when more studies were done on human physiology. Later on, studies were done on hormones and their role, as well as on the muscle fibers. So let me just open this myth wide, right? So the study was done on the muscles. So generally the muscles have two types of fibers. One is the fast twitch muscle fibers or fast contracting muscle fibers, and another type of muscle fibers are slow twitch muscle fibers or slow contracting muscle fibers. When we do some explosive work, weightlifting, running and all these things, at that time fast twitch muscle fibers are working. When we are doing just normal walk and all, that time slow twitch muscles are working. When fast twitch muscles are activated, they enter into anaerobic respiration, and that resulted in lactic acid, and that resulted in exhaustion. Slow twitch muscle fibers, they do aerobic respiration. So men have more high twitch muscle fibers and women have more slow twitch muscle fibers. That means if men run behind a prey, the men would exhaust faster compared to women. That's the simple logic that some anthropologists, some scientists applied on muscle, right, to question the man the hunter hypothesis. The second logic is on the role of hormones. So men has testosterone, similarly women have estrogen, right? And scholars identified that estrogen is associated with high stamina, right? And the logic is given that sometimes men, here I am talking about human had to run behind the game or the prey for kilometers, and that requires stamina, right? If estrogen is associated with stamina and slow twitch fibers are also important in stamina, that means women could also be the hunters. Effectively, this study questioned the men the hunter hypothesis, right? We are not saying that who was the hunter, who was the gatherer. Maybe both were the hunters and both were the gatherers also at the same time. But the idea that men was the hunter and women was the gatherer, that was questioned, that was teared apart by new anthropological studies. Now, what anthropology is actually doing? Anthropology is ever evolving discipline. That means it provides us some knowledge, and if counter evidences are presented, then anthropologists would happily accept the counter evidences and would contribute to the richness of anthropology as a discipline. So anthropology is testable and correctable. Because of this correctability, anthropology can be considered as a scientific and objective discipline also. So I think you might have understood that those who were talking about gender inferiority or women's inferiority just because of the biology they were questioned here. Now, one more thing you can consider here, I have written the word gender, not sex. There is a difference between the word sex and gender. Sex is the biology and gender is the social construction of that biology. Okay, so that's what you can see on gender. Similarly, race. The idea of race was constructed by the colonial powers of Europe, and colonial powers were white. They believed that the whites have bigger brains and higher physiological capacity, and the colored people, the dark skinned people, they have smaller brains and lesser physiological capability. That was their idea. That means white races were superior and colored races were inferior mentally as well as physiologically. That was their idea, and they tried to prove this using some scientific measurement, some anthropometric measurements. They measured the head size and all, and on the basis of that they tried to prove it. Later on, studies proved that head size it changed with the change in the environment, number one. Second, the head size and the intelligence is not directly correlated. That idea came into forth, and later on new study on the genetics and all that also disproved the idea of the biological racism or scientific racism. So the myth of the race was also busted, and you know that now most of the intelligent people in the world are Indians, right? You look at Microsoft, you look at any of the bigger organization in the world, you will find that Indians are on the top of their executive authority. So if Indians are less intelligent or colored people are less intelligent, why they are sitting on the top? Just that question. So we anthropologists have rejected the idea of scientific racism as well. Similarly, when colonial powers came to India, they tried to create a boundary between Aryans and non-Aryans. They consider that Aryans are similar to the Europeans, so they are having superior mental and physiological ability, and the other have the lesser one. So that divide was also a myth, that was also proved. ट्राइब को कलर्ड पीपल लेके गया, नॉन आर्यन पीपल ही लेके गया. सो ट्राइब्स को उन्होंने समझा सैवेज पीपल, एंड दीज सैवेज पीपल आर सुपरस्टिशियस, irrational. Why they are superstitious, irrational? Because they have lesser mental capacity. Again, the same idea of scientific racism was applied by the colonial powers to understand. Later on, these myths were busted by anthropologists. Another myth is that behavior of men is determined by biology, right? You can see that here. It's not just biology, right? Rather, culture also plays a very, very important role. And in that, you can understand the study of Margaret Mead in Samoan society, right? When Margaret Mead went to Samoa, there was a prevalent hypothesis at that time that the adolescent behavior is determined by the hormones released, secreted at the time of adolescence. That hypothesis was popularized by Stanley Hall and many other scholars of that time of 1920s. When she went there, she found that the behavior of the Samoan girls were very peaceful, harmonious. There was no hostility, there was no rebelliousness. On the other hand, the behavior of the American and the European girls in the stage of adolescence was very rebellious. So when she compared the two, she found that biology of the two is similar, but their behaviors are different. That means it is not biology, rather there must be something in the culture that might be influencing the behavior of the girls in different cultures. And that's where the idea or the theory of culture influencing personality emerged, right? So these things can be discussed in that manner. So these are some of the myths. So I believe these 40-45 minutes or maybe more than that might have been useful for you. So do try to write these questions and get back to us. We'll be waiting for you. Thank you. All the very best.